secteur en appliquant le principe de l'éducation pour tous. À cet effet, tous les cycles de l'enseignement primaire et secondaire sont ouverts aux enfants des réfugiés qui bénéficient d'un traitement favorable au même titre que les nationaux pour la formation. Dans le même élan, le gouvernement, avec l'appui de la Banque mondiale, a mis en place un plan d'assistance sociale qui permettra aux réfugiés de figurer dans le registre social. Il s'agit, à travers ce plan, de fournir aux réfugiés vulnérables un accès gratuit à des soins de santé. Dans le respect de la dignité et de la sécurité des réfugiés, le Congo a procédé courant 2018 et 2019 au rapatriement volontaire d'environ 9 000 réfugiés centrafricains. Madame la haut-commissaire, le 27 novembre dernier, le gouvernement congolais a organisé une réunion de concertation participative et inclusive élargie aux partenaires privés et aux organisations non gouvernementales afin de consolider les bonnes pratiques en matière de protection des réfugiés. Nous sommes persuadés qu'aucune solution durable aux solutions des réfugiés ne sera trouvée sans une coopération internationale qui s'illustrera par des contributions et des actions concrètes. La charge reposant sur les pays d'accueil pourrait être alors allégée. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur l'ambassadeur. Doy la palabra a la representante permanente adjunta de Uruguay, María Alejandra Costa Prieto.
Madam Prieto, you have the floor.
Gracias, Alto Comisionado. Uruguay celebra con gran entusiasmo la realización de este primer Foro Mundial sobre Refugiados, que junto al Pacto Mundial representa un nuevo paradigma en nuestros esfuerzos conjuntos para fortalecer la cooperación internacional y la solidaridad con los refugiados y con los países de acogida. Uruguay no ha sido ni es ajeno a las tendencias mundiales en materia de movilidad humana y menos aún a los grandes desafíos que ellas generan. En tal sentido, nuestro país ha venido trabajando incesantemente en el fortalecimiento institucional y normativo de forma tal de poder enfrentar este fenómeno de manera efectiva y eficaz. Desde hace más de 10 años hemos llevado a cabo diferentes programas en colaboración con el ACNUR. El llamado Programa de Reasentamiento Rural ha permitido el reasentamiento de familias latinoamericanas en el país, facilitándoles empleo, facilitándoles ofertas concretas de empleo, el suministro de una vivienda decente, así como otras facilidades destinadas a una rápida y efectiva inserción de esas familias en la sociedad uruguaya. Este es, como bien sabemos, un elemento fundamental para asegurar su estabilidad y su bienestar. En materia de apatridia y a fin de continuar contribuyendo al esfuerzo colectivo para su erradicación, Uruguay ya se comprometió en la última sesión del Comité Ejecutivo a realizar una efectiva implementación de la reciente ley sobre el derecho de toda persona sin nacionalidad a solicitar y recibir protección en el territorio uruguayo y abordar todos los casos que se identifiquen dentro del país. Para finalizar, quisiéramos reiterar una vez más nuestro anhelo de que los compromisos asumidos en relación con las personas refugiadas y desplazadas fortalezcan la capacidad de la comunidad internacional y los organismos internacionales como el ACNUR para encontrar soluciones concretas y duraderas basadas en los principios de solidaridad y responsabilidad internacional compartida para millones de seres humanos que se encuentran en situación de extrema fragilidad. Solo de esta forma estaremos en condiciones de garantizar el estricto respeto de la dignidad y los derechos de estas personas. Muchas gracias, señor Alto Comisionado.
Muchas gracias a usted por ser tan breve también. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Israel, Aviva Ras Shechter. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. High Commissioner. Excellencies, dear colleagues, at the outset, I would like to thank UNHCR for organizing this important event. We would like to join many others in commending the work of UNHCR. Israel absorbed mass immigration from its very establishment, including hundreds of thousands of displaced persons and refugees, and managed to integrate people from many different parts of the world into one cohesive and vibrant society. Mr. High Commissioner, we share the view that a diversified toolbox is necessary to confront a huge challenge of displacement. In this regard, we completely agree that development should go hand in hand with humanitarian action. We believe this is an important step if we are really committed to leaving no one behind. Mr. High Commissioner, Israel puts a special emphasis on taking care of asylum seekers and those living in Israel protected by non-refoulement. Every child is entitled to free education from the age of 3 until the age of 18 as any other Israeli citizen. Every child can receive affordable and good quality health services, and in case of medical emergency will receive full treatment free of charge. Mr. High Commissioner, we would like to share with you some of the programs developed in Israel, either directly by state authorities or by its vibrant civil society and innovative private sector, both at national and municipal levels. Regarding vocational training as a means to acquire practical skills and competence at a high level that can enable the penetration into the labor market worldwide, NGOs developed a 3-month coding vocational training program addressing the demand of the central Israeli economic sector, particularly the Israeli high-tech sector facing an apparent shortage of software engineers and developers. Asylum seekers are integrated in a 3-month-long coding training program that seeks to integrate them into the workforce, while laying the foundation for asylum seekers to pursue a professional path in tech-concentrated careers upon successful completion of the program. It is worth mentioning that there is a growing collaboration between academic institutions and NGOs in order to create new programs and partnerships with other countries and share best practices. The government of Israel, together with the Center for International Migration and Integration, have been collaborating in order to create better conditions for foreign workers from various countries and asylum seekers from Africa. The Aid and Information Center is yet another municipal social service by the city of Tel Aviv, where most of the asylum seekers live, that provides support to individuals and families given by social workers, students, and volunteers. The center focuses on education, health, employment, housing, legal status, pregnancy and childbirth, children at risk, humanitarian cases, and referral for legal support. Finally, I would like to highlight the important role that Mashav, Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation, which is part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, plays in promoting international cooperation and sharing Israel's expertise with other countries that can benefit from it, including host countries and refugee communities. In this regard, Mashav International Agricultural Training Center focuses on training programs for human capacity building within the spectrum of water management, agriculture, rural development, and environment. The center is a regional, international, as well as country-specific workshops, courses, conferences, and professional study tours. These programs are designed to transform and improve the agriculture production in development countries.
Sorry, Ambassador, we're running out of time. Go ahead, but you need to wrap up. Please conclude. Yes, please. Conclude your statement.
Thank you, Mr. High Commissioner. While we welcome the opportunity to have a dialogue among different stakeholders, we are concerned that some delegations, including one of the co-conveners, have decided to politicize these deliberations. If the real aim of this forum is to work together and to foster cooperation towards a better protection of refugees, blunt accusations and politicization have no place in this room. Otherwise, the forum loses its focus and ultimate goal to protect and improve the lives of so many who truly need it. I thank you, Mr. High Commissioner.
Thank you, and apologies for this, but I need to be very disciplined, otherwise we won't finish the list. I give now the floor to the Ambassador of Ghana, Ramses Joseph Cleland. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. High Commissioner. Ghana has a long history of hosting refugees and will continue to do so, especially towards people in distress within the sub-region and beyond. Mr. High Commissioner, the government of Ghana has put in place concrete measures that ensure that every child within the country enjoys free education up to the senior high school level. And I'm happy to inform that refugee children are included in the free education policy. Furthermore, the government has revamped the National Health Insurance Scheme to provide primary health care and universal coverage for all, including refugees. In line with our international commitment to saving lives, protecting rights, and building a better future for refugees, the Ghana Refugee Board and the National Identification Authority are working to ensure that refugees are also included in the government's policy to issue the National Biometric Identity Card, known as the Ghana Card, to all its nationals. The government of Ghana aims to implement this policy in a coordinated, timely, effective, and efficient manner, which would ensure the inclusion of refugees in the social and economic activities of the country. The following incentive packages are being considered at the highest level of government to encourage the Ghanaian private sector to support host communities to play a meaningful role in the economic transformation of the lives of refugees. First of all, policy declaration of 4 refugee hosting communities as economic zones. Secondly, secured operational space with the necessary facilitative governance arrangements, institutional, administrative, and enforcement mechanisms to ensure hassle-free operations. 3, employment subsidy schemes targeting 1 refugee, 1 woman, and 1 youth from the refugee and host communities to be employed by the signatory private company financed partly by the international community. These incentives fall within the context of the Global Compact on Refugees based on the principles of burden sharing and collective responsibilities for the hosting, integration, and sustained livelihoods of refugees. It is envisaged that this policy will provide a blueprint for a common purpose, expertise, and availability of resources to the various actors, such as the displaced population, host communities, and civil society organizations. It will also provide the government, private sector, and bilateral actors with technical and financial resources, which would enable the government to implement wholly the Global Compact on Refugees. Ghana wishes to call on all members and UNHCR to work fully towards the policy outcomes of this forum to help eradicate the root causes and the factors that lead to the movement of people within and across borders in search of protection. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Nepal, Mani Prasad Bhattaraj.
Mr. High Commissioner, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we take pleasure to attend the first Global Refugee Forum as a primary platform for the follow-up and review of the Global Compact on Refugees. Our country has provided, on a humanitarian ground, shelter to almost 120,000 Bhutanese refugees over 3 decades, despite our limited capacity and difficult domestic situation. We commend the core group of 8 host countries for taking our significant refugee burden through resettlement. Since 2007, some 113,000 Bhutanese refugees have been resettled. Nearly 7,000 Bhutanese refugees remain, and most of them are desperate to return to their homeland. We continue to support their livelihood through access to basic services, including health and education. We appreciate the support of all relevant agencies, including the UNHCR in this regard. Mr. High Commissioner, true transformation of refugees' life hinges upon voluntary repatriation and sustainable reintegration into their homeland. We therefore reiterate our call to the Royal Government of Bhutan to resume immediate results-oriented dialogue and without further delay and a priority basis, repatriate the small number of remaining its citizens living refugee life in Nepal over 30 years, as they have chosen the only option of repatriation to their homeland in safety and with dignity and honor. We at the same time call upon the international community to act decisively for protecting refugees' right to return to their homeland and to ensure their rapid rehabilitation under all circumstances. In this context, we also recall relevant UNGA resolution placing the primary responsibility on countries of origin for creating conditions for safe and dignified voluntary repatriation of their national. Mr. High Commissioner, as documented by UNHCR reports, low and middle income countries have assumed the huge burden and responsibility of global refugees by hosting about 85% of them. It is therefore critical to generate necessary political will and galvanize robust international cooperation and resources mobilization for addressing all global refugee problems. Let us commit to the spirit of partnership, responsibility, and service to the humanity, commensurate with our capacity and leaving no one behind as we pursue a transformative agenda of sustainable development for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Libya, Tamim Bayou.
اسمحوا لي أن ألقي كلمة السيد السفير تميم بايو كنائب له حيث تعذر حضوره لظروف طارئة. السيد الرئيس، السيدات والسادة الحضور، يطيب لي بداية أن أشكركم على تنظيم هذا الملتقى الهام وأن أعرب عن تقديري العالي للمفوضية السامية للاجئين لمواقفها واهتمامها بالقضايا والمسائل التي نحن بصدد تناولها، ونتمنى أن يكلل هذا الملتقى بالنجاح وتحقيق الأهداف المرجوة منه. السيدات والسادة، ندرك جميعا أن مناقشة مسألة اللاجئين هي من المسائل ذات الأهمية والأولوية على أجندة كافة الدول والمنظمات الدولية، وأهمية هذا الملتقى تأتي في وقت تزداد فيه التحديات التي تواجه دولنا في مواجهة هذه الأزمة الإنسانية، مما يحتم علينا متابعة الجهود وتبادل وجهات النظر وتوحيد السياسات والعمل بروح المسؤولية لإيجاد حلول دائمة لها. فاللجوء عادة تسبقه مرحلتين من المعاناة الإنسانية يمر بها الإنسان في مساره نحو بلد المقصد لتقديم اللجوء، مرحلة النزوح ومرحلة الهجرة. وليبيا تواجه بشكل كبير التحديات في المرحلتين الأولى والثانية كبلد عبور، ونحن على يقين بأن معالجة مشاكل الهجرة واللجوء لا يجب أن تقتصر على الحل الأمني وحده، فالمقاربة الأمنية وحدها لا تكفي. يتوجب العمل على المقاربة الشمولية بتشجيع التنمية في بلدان المصدر، بإقامة مشاريع تنموية حقيقية لخلق فرص العمل للشباب ورفع المستوى الاقتصادي لهم بما يمكنهم من الحياة الكريمة في أوطانهم وبين أهليهم. ولن يأتي ذلك إلا بمساعدة دول المصدر على بناء اقتصاديات قوية وخلق فرص جديدة للاستثمار، خاصة في مجال المشاريع الصغرى والمتوسطة. إننا كسلطة شرعية في ليبيا ممثلة بحكومة الوفاق الوطني سنكمل المسيرة التي بدأناها، وسنعزز تعاوننا مع جيراننا وأصدقائنا في الجنوب وأصدقائنا في الشمال والمنظمات الدولية ذات العلاقة في كل ما من شأنها أن يسهم في معالجة هذه المسائل الشائكة. وقد أشار السيد مدير عام منظمة الهجرة الدولية أمس بالتعاون الإيجابي بين المنظمة ودولة ليبيا، ونحن اليوم نشكره على دعم المنظمة لبلادنا في معالجة ظاهرة الهجرة، كما أوجه الشكر للمفوضية السامية للاجئين من خلال برنامج التوطين في بلد الثالث. وهنا يجب أن نذكر الجمهورية الإيطالية لمواقفها الإيجابية، ونحب جميع الدول أن تحذو حذوها. كما أود أن أوجه الشكر والامتنان لدولة كندا لجهودها في تعزيز الجوانب الإنسانية الخلاقة في التعاطي مع معاناة اللاجئين. ونداءنا اليوم للمجتمع الدولي ككل بأنه بإمكاننا اليوم مساهمة بشكل فعال وإيجابي في معالجة هذه الظواهر بشكل تضامني ومسؤولية مشتركة. شكرا السيد الرئيس.
Shukran, thank you very much. Je donne la parole à l'ambassadeur de l'Algérie, Rachid Belbaki.
Rachid Belbaki, you have the floor, sir.
Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire, le présent forum se tient à un moment où nous assistons à une hausse sans précédent du nombre de réfugiés qui a doublé en 20 ans pour atteindre 25,9 millions, dont 16 millions en situation prolongée. S'il faut se féliciter que 149 États sont partis à la Convention et à son protocole, le fardeau de la charge sur les pays d'asile reste lourd. Les pays riches sont loin d'en faire suffisamment pour partager le coût de la protection des personnes et les programmes d'aide alimentaire aux réfugiés demeurent largement sous-financés. Nous considérons qu'une action associant le HCR, les pays hôtes, les donateurs ainsi que les partenaires d'exécution est plus que jamais nécessaire, non seulement en termes d'assistance et de protection, mais particulièrement en termes de recherche de solutions durables. La synergie entre la protection internationale, la recherche de solutions durables, le développement et le respect de la dignité des réfugiés est indispensable et doit se fonder sur le principe de solidarité internationale et du partage du fardeau et des responsabilités tout en privilégiant le rapatriement volontaire dans la sécurité et la dignité comme solution appropriée. Ma délégation reste préoccupée par les flux mixtes de migrants qui se déclinent souvent par des drames, comme cela est le cas en Méditerranée. Il s'agit d'un autre défi à relever par le HCR face au durcissement des politiques migratoires de certains États. Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire, fidèle à sa tradition d'asile et d'hospitalité séculaire, l'Algérie continue d'accueillir à Tindouf depuis plus de 4 décennies des réfugiés sahraouis et prend en charge l'essentiel de l'assistance et de la protection dont ils ouvrent droit en tant que réfugiés reconnus par les Nations Unies. L'Algérie s'est investie dans le raccordement des camps de réfugiés au réseau national d'électricité, la construction d'infrastructures et l'amélioration de l'accès aux services de base, notamment l'eau, les soins de santé et les divers cycles d'enseignement. Aussi, mon pays œuvre à réunir les conditions idoines pour permettre au HCR et à ses partenaires de déployer leurs activités en dépit des innombrables défis dans la sous-région. C'est l'occasion pour nous de saluer le HCR et ses partenaires pour le parachèvement en 2018 de l'étude commune interagence et le consortium d'ONG activant dans les camps de Tindouf, laquelle avait retenu le chiffre indicatif de 173 600 réfugiés sahraouis vivant dans les camps de Tindouf. Il s'agit de la première opération de recensement saluée par nombre de donateurs qui donnent une radioscopie et un instantané sur le nombre de réfugiés ayant trouvé asile en Algérie. Enfin, l'Algérie accueille par ailleurs des réfugiés et personnes déplacées d'autres pays éprouvant les conflits et l'instabilité, dont 40 000 ressortissants syriens, au profit desquels un dispositif a été mis en place qui prévoit des facilités d'accès à l'éducation, aux services de santé, au marché du travail ainsi qu'au logement. Mon pays continuera à leur offrir l'hospitalité et les accompagnera lorsqu'ils exprimeront leur volonté de retour pour participer à la reconstruction de leur pays. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Vietnam, Duong Chi Dung.
Excellency High Commissioner Grandi, distinguished delegates, let me first express Vietnam's high appreciation to the UNHCR, the government of Switzerland, and the co-governors for organizing the very first Global Refugee Forum exactly 1 year after the adoption of the GCR. We strongly believe that the forum will be of great success. High Commissioner, the adoption of the GCR and its implementation are of great importance, first for refugees themselves and their communities, and then for member states and other relevant stakeholders in order to raise the issues of protecting the rights of refugees, sharing burden and responsibility among nations at the global, regional, and national levels. We strongly believe that the forum will provide a very useful platform for member states and all other stakeholders to share ideas and initiatives on the implementation of the GCR. High Commissioner, in 2020, as the chair of the ASEAN and the non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, Vietnam commits to actively and responsibly cooperating with the other UN member states in the effective implementation of the GCR. In this regard, we'd like to highlight the following. First, it is necessary for countries to prevent conflicts and further sustain peace, stability, implement measures to achieve a sustainable economic growth, enhance dialogues and promote a global partnership for development so as to effectively address the root cause of refugee plights. Second, the international community should put in place burden and responsibility sharing mechanisms to support refugees and host countries more effectively. The implementation of the Global Compact should be based on each and every country's specific conditions and capacities. Third, we should ensure transparency in granting refugee status for asylum seekers and clearly distinguish between refugees and irregular migrants for economic purposes, especially in the context of increasing number of non-traditional security challenges such as epidemics, natural disasters, and climate change. High Commissioner, we would like also to take this opportunity to express our sincere gratitude to the United Nations HCR and for supporting Vietnam in our efforts toward eliminating statelessness and its close cooperation in related regional and international fora. Vietnam particularly appreciates the UNHCR's positive assessment of its achievements in the I Belong global campaign and believes that this campaign will result in reducing and eradicating statelessness globally by 2024. In conclusion, Vietnam looks forward to further strengthening the close cooperation with UNHCR and other stakeholders in the dissemination and successful implementation of GCR in Vietnam and the world over. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Je donne la parole à l'ambassadeur du Togo, Yakole Koku Johnson. Vous avez la parole.
Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire, le Togo salue l'organisation de ce premier forum mondial sur les réfugiés qui offre aux États et partenaires un cadre privilégié pour examiner les défis et les moyens d'un meilleur partage de la charge et des responsabilités sur les questions des réfugiés. Mon pays accueille plus de 12 000 réfugiés de nationalités diverses et saisit donc l'occasion qu'offre le présent forum pour réaffirmer son engagement à respecter les principes directeurs et œuvrer dans la mesure de ses moyens à la réalisation du programme d'action du Pacte mondial sur les réfugiés. Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire, le Togo œuvre inlassablement à accorder assistance et protection aux personnes réfugiées sur son territoire, tout en recherchant constamment, avec l'appui du HCR et des autres partenaires, des solutions durables à leur situation. C'est dans cette dynamique que le gouvernement togolais a organisé conjointement avec le HCR et plusieurs organisations de la société civile en novembre 2017 à Lomé, un forum national qui a permis de recueillir et évaluer les préoccupations de toutes les parties prenantes. Ce forum a débouché sur l'adoption d'un plan d'action sur la période 2018-2020 ainsi que la création d'un comité technique de mise en œuvre des recommandations avec pour attribution, entre autres, identifier les acteurs clés du processus d'intégration locale des réfugiés, proposer des mesures appropriées en vue de la naturalisation des réfugiés de longue durée, l'obtention de cartes de séjour de longue durée à coût réduit et l'application du droit togolais aux enfants de réfugiés nés au Togo sans aucune discrimination. En réalité, Monsieur le Président, depuis plusieurs années déjà, mon pays a pris des mesures pour procéder à l'enregistrement systématique des naissances afin de prévenir l'apatridie d'ici 2021. Il entend faciliter la délivrance des cartes de séjour privilégiées pour les réfugiés ayant fait cette option. De même, le Togo procède depuis 2017 à la mise à jour régulière de la base de données de la population de réfugiés en milieu rural et urbain pour le profilage dans l'optique du choix de solutions durables initiées par le gouvernement. Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire, le Togo, en dépit de ses efforts constants pour l'accueil et la protection des réfugiés, efforts soutenus par une volonté politique et une détermination inébranlable, demeure confronté, comme bien d'autres pays, à la problématique des ressources publiques limitées pour à la fois assurer la durabilité et la résilience et répondre aux défis résultant de la diversification des causes et des menaces nouvelles. L'occasion de ce forum est donc pour ma délégation d'exhorter toutes les parties prenantes à un partenariat multilatéral Forum et pour une implication accrue du secteur privé dans une approche d'investissement durable. En cela, ce premier forum doit constituer un point d'ancrage, de partenariat et de synergie ambitieux et innovant. À cet égard, le Togo souhaite réaffirmer sa détermination à continuer à promouvoir la mise en œuvre efficiente du pacte mondial sur les réfugiés. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. If you allow me now, we will pause briefly the list of speakers for a very special event, one of the closing moments of this forum, which is quite unique. And I will invite, we will hear in the next few minutes, very briefly, the perspective of 5 refugee representatives. And they are here in the room, and I will invite them now to the podium to deliver their very brief statements. Please, you're welcome. So welcome to the podium. Sorry that the logistics here is not very friendly, but we do welcome you very much. What I will do is I will call you, present you, and then ask you to make your respective short statement for the audience. Thank you very much for doing this. It is very much appreciated. And we begin with Shaza Al-Rihawi on behalf of the Global Refugee Network. Please go ahead.
Thank you, High Commissioner. We as refugee representatives at the first ever Global Refugee Forum are thrilled to see other refugee fellows present and in action at such a high-level meeting that's about us. Yesterday, the High Commissioner noted that we played a pivotal role in the preparation of the Global Refugee Forum. As the SG noted, we agree that the GCR is both our collective achievement and that we have a collective responsibility to support the implementation. We consulted our own communities and refugee groups in different parts of the world in the development of the GCR and different part of the world and development of the GCR and planning for the GRF. In partnership with UNHCR and other stakeholders, we have been working closely and tirelessly to ensure that the process towards the GRF itself and beyond are meaningfully inclusive for refugees. We would like to acknowledge that the forum efforts and offers an opportunity to create an innovative and collective solution to displacement. We should not forget, however, that the best solution resides in solving root causes and preventing displacement in the first place, in addition to rebuilding the home countries. We are very grateful to states and other stakeholders for making important pledge to the forum. As refugees, we were the first to pledge and have also actively worked with many of you to design inclusive, sustainable, and impactful pledges. My name is Shaza Nabila Rihawi, the Global Refugee-led Network. The Global Refugee-led Network is one of the delegation contribution to the preparation of the GRF. In fact, the GRN was the first organization to make a joint multi-stakeholders pledge for the forum focusing on meaningful refugee participation. In our pledge, we commit to support the meaningful participation of the refugee and host community in decisions that affect their lives. Participation should take into account the diversity within communities, including age, gender, and disability. This pledge will support the agency of this. We seek to assist while improving the relevance, quality, transparency, and accountability of the assistance. We furthermore commit to share experiences and the other implementation of this pledge at subsequent global refugee forums and/or high-level official meetings. Since June, we have been able to mobilize sustainable support for the pledge from different stakeholders, including states such as Canada, Denmark, the private sector and NGOs, and the IFRC. To tell you a bit more about GRN, the Global Refugee-led Network is a coalition of refugees and refugee-led organizations in 6 regions of the world: North America, Latin America, Europe, Africa, and Middle East, and then Asia Pacific. Through our efforts, we cooperate with and amplify refugee voices and initiatives nationally, regionally, and globally. The pursuit of the meaningful refugee participation is the fundamental pillar and principle of our work. To this end, we have been facilitating refugee participation through refugee summits within each of our regions and at the global level. Thus far, we have learned from the knowledge and expertise of over 130 refugee-led initiatives from over 60 countries and counting, which made possible through careful planning and innovative virtual participation practices. From Asia to Latin America and everywhere in between, the summits have given us and our fellow refugee participants a sense of belonging to the new global community and the opportunity to share experience and exchange ideas for addressing displacement. This learning is unequaled, and the depth of a human connecting has been extraordinary. Across summits, demands were similar, namely, refugee-led initiatives want to be included in decisions where decisions are being made about their lives. Furthermore, in advance of the forum, as a refugee delegation, we met and developed a shared vision and messages for the GRF and beyond. We call for UNHCR and other stakeholders to support the establishment of the list of at least 1 refugee observer seat on the UNHCR Exam and Standing Committee. We also call UNHCR regional institutions to work with us on creating a refugee-led advisory bodies that would inform their work on regional levels. Also, we call on stakeholders to increase the monetary and non-monetary resources to support the refugee-led movement. Today, at this very moment, we made history by including over 70 refugee representatives as a co-organizer, speakers, and experts in this historical meeting. Let's make sure that this became a new norm, because refugee participation is a right, not a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Shaza Al-Rihawi. I will now give the floor to Wenasa Al-Araha on behalf of the refugee student delegation. Just as I did with the delegates from state, may I make an appeal to the refugee representatives to be short. Otherwise, I'll have to urge you. So look at your statements, say the essential, that's all. And please, Wenasa Al-Araha, please go ahead. Al-Araha, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. High Commissioner. I'll try to be quick. The United Nations 2030 Agenda recognizes that the future lies in the hands of today's younger generations, who will pass the torch of future to future generations. To harness the potential of younger generations, we must expand access to inclusive, quality education opportunities at all levels of learning and ensure equal participation of girls and boys and those with diverse and different needs. Mr. High Commissioner, refugee youth have formed a global network of refugee students in higher education to connect and amplify the voices of refugee students worldwide. Some of us are here today. Part of our mission is to elevate the importance of secondary education as the link between refugee girls and boys and their future beyond primary schools. The pressures we face to find jobs and contribute to the financial stability of our families drives many of us away from education and the doors it can open. As refugee youth leaders, our request today is that you do not forget that your best investment is in our education and our future. Through education, we will become advocates, role models, critical thinkers, entrepreneurs, policy makers, peace builders, and will contribute to the communities and societies around us. Refugee youth are often the most resilient and passionate students. If 1,000 miles of walking to reach safety, countless number of days spent hungry, and frightening escapes from danger and death did not shatter our dreams, surely nothing will. Refugee students bring diverse cultural traditions. They inspire cross-disciplinary discussions. They upend prejudices and are motivated to give back to the organizations and institutions that fought for their rights. Refugee students are the role models to the younger children who follow in their footsteps. Refugee students never take their chances for education for granted. Finally, Mr. High Commissioner, it's no secret that quality education has the power to change lives. Education transforms, and in that transformation, we gain skills and knowledge. We amplify our potential, and we find our pathways to self-reliance. With strong values and high expectation, with education, we are better able to achieve improved living standards, safety and security for our families, and most of all, the promise of opportunity for the children who follow in our footsteps. Education makes it possible not only for us to survive, but also to thrive. Thank you. Merci.
So please, since you're saying such important things, make it short so I don't have to cut you, because these are really the key messages for this forum. Thank you very, very much, Ms. Wenaza Alaraba. And now I give the floor to Andrea Ayala on behalf of the Gender Audit Team.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone. The Gender Audit Team includes 2 academics and 9 refugees women from diverse backgrounds. Came about because issues relating to women and girls, age, gender, and diversity, and sexual and gender-based violence were often not acknowledged at international meetings or included in the meeting reports. We were determined that this will not happen in the Global Compact on Refugees. Drawing on our lived experience and expertise, we brought voices of refugee women and girls in our communities to the meetings. We made presentations and produced reports consistently highlighting the impacts of FGBB and the urgent need to the age, gender, and diversity approach to be a visible top. This, however, was only the first step. The real success on our work will be measured in the number and quality of the pledges made at this forum to meaningfully include women and girls in all of our diversities and prioritize addressing the major barriers to gender equality which continues to marginalize and exclude refugee women and girls, most particularly sexual and gender-based violence. Plan International stated, we must look at child and forced marriage as SGBB. It is an institutionalization of daily rape. Also, the ambassador of Botswana stated, this needs to start by naming the problem. Rape is a crime. It must come out of the shadows. However, the US noted prioritizing women and girls is still not part of the DNA of emergency responses. And we add that that DNA must include lesbian, trans, and queer women around the world. This is what we need to change, and that what change needs to start. Unless this happens, the rights of refugee women and girls will continue to be condemned to the oblivion through the myth of mainstream. We have raised our voice. Now it's time not only to hear us, but to include us. And I want to end with a really positive note and outcome of this forum, as I'm very happy and proud to present and announce that as now UNHCR and all stakeholders, we have a refugee-led organization with whom to engage with, as we are establishing the first refugee women network, the Global Independent Refugee Women Leaders, GIRL, where all refugees women will have their own voice amplified, and with this, we will put an end for the one-way collaboration that had happened until this moment. Thank you.
Well said, Andrea Ayala, and I now give the floor to Arash Bordbar on behalf of the Global Youth Advisory Council.
Thank you so much, Mr. High Commissioner. The final draft of the Global Compact on Refugees has 17 specific mention of youth. I would like to remind us of paragraph 77 of the GCR, which states, the empowerment of the refugees and host community youth, building on their talent, potential, and energy, supports resilience and eventual solution. The active participation and engagement of the refugee and host community youth will be supported by states and relevant stakeholders, including through projects that recognize, utilize, and develop their capacities and skills and foster their physical and emotional well-being. Young people can play a big role in implementing the outcome of the Global Refugee Forum that will work for refugees. Organizations can partner with community-based refugee initiatives, including those led by youth that are working to protect refugees in all aspects of age, gender, diversity, and disability. The Global Youth Advisory Council serves as a consultative group on the issues relating to the protection and development of young people who are refugees, internally displaced, and stateless, and their communities in the country of asylum and in the country of resettlement, to bring youth perspective on the broad range of issues into the work of UNHCR and its implementing partners at all levels. The Global Youth Advisory Council pledge, invest in youth and build community resilience. We commit to provide strategic leadership and technical assistance to strengthen the skills, capacity, and networking abilities of refugees, internally displaced, and host community youth in all their diversities. This pledge supports the potential, leadership, and advocacy of youth in displacement setting. Through this youth-to-youth initiative and also our other collaboration, for example, with the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action and also Secretary General Envoy on Youth, young women and men will empower themselves and each other to protect, celebrate their diversity and use their skills to contribute to their communities. We are seeking states and other actors to join Switzerland, Women Refugee Commission, UNHCR, and others in supporting this pledge to facilitate the implementation of the GCR at all levels, especially at the local level. We are asking states and other stakeholders to take step with us, which means include refugee, stateless, and other displaced youth in national youth strategies and national sports and cultural initiatives. Support initiatives to facilitate learning the national language for refugee youth. Facilitate the acquisition of personal identification documents, including machine-readable convention travel documents, which I'm holding one. Ensure that all security, immigration, and asylum services are well-trained in refugee rights and appropriate youth-friendly procedures. Participation does not mean just listening to us and hearing us, but really translating our voices into the policy and programming. We are in dramatically shrinking protection space. No one should be excluded. Different actors have different roles to play. We have to remember that the bottom line is to enhance the protection environment and solution, especially for the people who are in desperate need. Shared responsibility is shared humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arash. And I now give the floor to Tina Dixon on behalf of the refugee co-sponsors.
Thank you, Mr. High Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. High Commissioner. Protection of refugees is about the visibility of displacement experiences, safety from sexual and gender-based violence, and the recognition that refugee life has value. Our experiences of forced displacement are not just stories. They are knowledge to pass on and learn from. Inclusion of refugees benefits all, refugees themselves and the host communities. But we must also ensure inclusion of diverse groups within refugee communities, such as LGBTIQ people and people with disabilities, whose experiences are constantly being erased from conversations, policy, and support. Such erasure is violence that prevents people from living their lives to the fullest potential. We cannot claim that everyone counts when we deny their human rights. For everyone to count, words must translate into actions. Looking ahead, it is really clear that we can achieve so much when we work collaboratively and as equal partners. We call on you all of us, to make sure that our next steps are considered and meaningfully built on some of the key pledges and contributions that have been made at this forum today. We are here to engage with all of you in full partnership and collaborate with you all in the implementation of GRF outcomes at the global, regional and local levels. We need to hold each other accountable on those pledges and ensure their effective implementation that embeds age, gender, diversity and disability approaches. We have produced the meaningful participation guidelines and other tools that would help us ensure that the next meeting, the next project, the next policy on refugees are made with refugees. We are committed to positive collaboration. We are doing our part. Now we're calling on you to do yours. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. And I think Tina Dixon's last words are really the message. The ball is now in our court to respond to the very important both pledges and requests that you have made. Some are difficult. Institutional mechanisms are complicated, and you are rightly saying we want to have a voice, since this is about refugees. So all we could do is invite you to the forum for now. The forum is an informal gathering, and in this forum have a voice, which I hope you have had the possibility to exercise through many, many different meetings. But we'll work both on what you have encouraged and suggested that we do, more than suggested, encouraged, pushed us to do more boldly. And of course, we will try to make this cooperation, this voice, as regular, as predictable, as possible, rather, as we can in all our deliberations about you and millions of refugees across the world. Thank you so much for being so bold, so clear, so courageous, and so real. Thank you very much. Let me now resume the list of state speakers, and I give the floor to the Ambassador of Malaysia, Ahmad Faisal bin Mohammed. The floor is yours.
Thank you, High Commissioner. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Malaysia thanks and congratulates the co-host for the convening of the inaugural GRF, a follow-up to the Global Compact on Refugees, GCR, adopted at the UNGA on 17 December 2018. Malaysia is proud to be part of the process in developing the GCR. Malaysia has a long history of hosting refugees, from Vietnam in the 1970s, southern Philippines and Cambodia in the 1980s, Bosnia in the 1990s, and more recently from Myanmar and Syria. Based on humanitarian grounds, Malaysia has taken up the financial and social responsibilities in providing assistance to refugees, although Malaysia is not party to the 1951 Convention and 1967 Protocol. Among others, between 2015 to 2018, Malaysia subsidized about $7 million of medical treatment for UNHCR refugee cardholders by government healthcare providers. The government facilitates access to education for refugee children through collaboration with UNHCR and NGOs by providing alternative learning centers and community learning centers, and is considering appropriate accreditation to them. And Malaysia is also finalizing arrangements to allow Rohingya UNHCR cardholders to work in selected sectors. Since 2017, Malaysia has been operating a field hospital at Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, with a total contribution of $4 million. We will continue to do so until December 2021. High Commissioner, at this forum, Malaysia, through our CSOs, have shared best practices based on whole-of-society approach involving refugee communities, CSOs, parliamentarians, government and private sectors, to address the needs of refugees in a holistic and effective manner. Moving forward, we must collectively address several challenges, In this regard, Malaysia welcomes the cooperation of all states and international organizations to shoulder proportionate burden and responsibility sharing in the management of refugees globally. We call on relevant countries to deliver on their commitments to receive more refugees for resettlement and relocation, and we call on the international community to address the root causes of the refugee problem. Finally, Malaysia is determined and committed in playing our part and meeting our responsibilities to promote the objectives of the GCR and the 2030 Agenda. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Je donne la parole à l'ambassadeur de la France, François Rivasson.
Grazie mille, signor Alto Commissario. Mesdames, Messieurs, tout protocole observé, je voudrais exprimer la satisfaction de la France pour l'organisation de ce premier forum mondial sur les réfugiés qui marque le premier anniversaire de l'adoption du pacte mondial, texte d'une importance capitale. Et en adoptant ce pacte, nous avons décidé, Monsieur le Commissaire, selon vos propres mots, un authentique partage des responsabilités. Il est temps de passer aux actes et la France entend assumer toutes ses responsabilités dans ce cadre. C'est pourquoi, après avoir salué ici la solidarité des pays de premier asile, la générosité des populations hôtes, je voudrais dire que la France s'est mobilisée au cours des dernières années pour offrir à sa mesure des voies complémentaires d'accès à son territoire sûr et légal. Cela passe d'abord par la réinstallation des réfugiés. Elle doit être améliorée. Avec 10 000 réfugiés réinstallés en 2018 et 2019, la France s'honore d'être devenue l'un des principaux pays de réinstallation dans le monde, l'un des tout premiers en Europe. Le président de la République a tenu, lors de sa rencontre avec vous-même, Monsieur le Commissaire, le 22 juillet dernier, j'étais présent, à renouveler l'engagement de la France. Et je vous le redis, cet engagement à réinstaller de nouveau 10 000 réfugiés au cours des deux prochaines années. Je voudrais saisir l'occasion de signaler la spécificité française, qui est la possibilité de délivrer des visas en vue de demander l'asile. Depuis 2012, cette pratique a permis l'accueil de près de 15 000 réfugiés, principalement syriens et irakiens, et cette procédure s'est faite avec le concours de la société civile. Je voudrais à cet égard citer le protocole exemplaire des couloirs humanitaires qui a été signé en mars 2017. La France juge aussi nécessaire de renforcer son système d'asile et d'éligibilité au statut de réfugié. Nous avons coparrainé le groupe sur les capacités de protection. Nous nous sommes engagés dans une importante réforme des procédures et de nos outils internes pour être plus réactifs et plus rapides. Accueillir les demandeurs d'asile et les réfugiés n'est d'ailleurs qu'une première étape, vous le savez. Nous devons donner à ces réfugiés les moyens de s'intégrer dans les sociétés d'accueil pour en être des acteurs à part entière. Cela implique apprentissage linguistique, accompagnement vers l'emploi et le logement, renforcement des liens avec la société d'accueil. Mon pays s'engage à davantage inclure la question des réfugiés en amont de l'élaboration des politiques publiques et c'est aussi le sens de l'engagement que prend la France aujourd'hui pour intensifier les efforts en vue de l'intégration et de l'accès des réfugiés à l'autonomie via la délégation interministérielle pour l'accueil et l'intégration des réfugiés. Monsieur le Commissaire, l'action de la France passe aussi par une adaptation aux enjeux internationaux et politiques actuels. Avec 70 millions de réfugiés déplacés internes qui pour leur majorité d'entre eux se trouvent dans un pays voisin de leur pays d'origine, il nous faut penser aussi à l'assistance humanitaire et à intégrer la dimension des réfugiés dans les programmes de développement, dans l'action au sein des enceintes multilatérales européennes et défendre le mandat et les intérêts du Haut Commissariat ainsi que la mention du pacte dans les textes internationaux dans ces enceintes. Au-delà, je pense aussi au changement climatique. Vous savez que la France a organisé avec la Norvège une session Spotlight centrée sur ce problème. Nous avons rejoint l'engagement commun pour répondre aux défis lancés par le HCR Clean Energy Challenge et nous poursuivons nos efforts à travers la présidence française de la plateforme sur les déplacés par des catastrophes climatiques, la PDD. Nous allons poursuivre l'intégration de ces questions dans notre stratégie humanitaire 2018 et 2022. Enfin, à l'échelle européenne, en matière d'accueil des réfugiés, notre approche doit être mieux harmonisée, mieux coordonnée. C'est pour cela que le président de la République a appelé à une refondation de Schengen qui passe par une remise à plat des règles de Dublin et des progrès sont possibles. Un premier pas a été fait à l'aveuglette avec l'Italie, l'Allemagne et Malte pour les personnes secourues en mer. Pour conclure, je vous assure, Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire, cher Filippo Grandi, du plein engagement de la France à continuer à porter les valeurs d'accueil et de protection des réfugiés et à continuer à les soutenir et à les faire vivre au plan national, au plan européen, au plan international. Merci de votre attention.
Merci, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. J'espère que les interprètes ont pu vous suivre. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of the United Kingdom, Julian Braithwaite. You have the floor.
Thank you, High Commissioner. As displacement numbers continue to grow, it is more important than ever to pay tribute to the huge generosity of host nations and communities welcoming those forced to flee. We are clear that this is a shared challenge and responsibility. The UK commitment and engagement is steadfast. More than £28 billion in funding to the Syria conflict marks our largest ever response to a humanitarian crisis. In the last few months, we have committed £30 million to vulnerable Venezuelans and £117 million of life-saving aid to the Rohingya refugee crisis. Additional and predictable funding is critical, but we must also be smarter with how we use what we have. The UK strongly backs the common position on financing for refugee situations endorsed by INCAF to more efficiently and effectively address forced displacement. The UK will continue to play its part in delivering on the transformational promise of the Global Compact on refugees. For example, on jobs and livelihoods, we've helped deliver more than 120,000 work permits for Syrian refugees in Jordan. Our latest funding to the Rohingya crisis response is ensuring protection for more than 450,000 refugees in Bangladesh. And on education, our support includes £85 million in new funding to the Education Cannot Wait initiative. As co-chair of this year's annual tripartite consultations on resettlement, we fully support UNHCR's three-year strategy on solutions. The UK's resettlement schemes have provided safe and legal routes for tens of thousands of people. This year, the UK reaffirmed its ongoing commitment to resettlement, announcing a new global scheme to start in 2020, resettling around 5,000 vulnerable refugees in its first year. Our community sponsorship scheme continues to grow. From next year, refugees resettled this way will be counted in addition to our main resettlement offer, and we continue to work with the Global Refugee Sponsorship Initiative to encourage and support states to develop community sponsorship schemes of their own. We endorsed the regional support platforms announced this week. In line with the SSAR, UK aid in Pakistan is helping to deliver quality textbooks and provide teachers to host and refugee children alike, while our new funding in Afghanistan will support more than 250,000 Afghan refugees. Our engagement in EGAD countries is well established. In Ethiopia, we're backing market creation and economic opportunities in refugee hosting areas. In Kenya, we're providing skills-based training in business and agriculture. And in Uganda, we played a key part in developing the country's first ever education response plan for both refugees and host communities. Finally, we must remember that today's forum is an important stepping stone, but not an end in itself. This is about where we go next and to identify priorities and opportunities to ensure a common understanding and direction of travel. The UK looks forward to continuing that journey alongside you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Sri Lanka, Aliar Lebbe Abdulaziz. You have the floor.
Thank you, High Commissioner. It gives us pleasure to join the Global Refugee Forum. We take this opportunity to assure Sri Lanka's fullest cooperation for the commendable work carried out by you, Mr. High Commissioner, and your personnel. The forum today represents a creative enterprise that could make multilateralism combined with humanity deliver on the needs of the most vulnerable in a timely and meaningful manner. Numerous challenges affect these vulnerable persons due to circumstances beyond their control. The conditions they are subjected to often tantamount to abnegating the very norms of protection, assistance, and assurance of durable solutions which the international community is called upon to uphold and promote. In reality, this even signifies the erosion in some quarters of empathy and equity needed to ensure that these vulnerable people are not left behind in development. Mr. High Commissioner, today, as we discuss the need for sharing of burden and responsibilities, a key component of the GCR, let us salute the efforts of fellow nations that, despite immense pressures on their national budgets and resources, continue to receive and host large numbers of people from neighboring countries and people fleeing situations of mass displacement. It is timely to extend our unstinted support for them as they fulfill this onerous humanitarian responsibility amidst numerous challenges. Sri Lanka has hosted asylum seekers and refugees for several decades, recognizing the universal principle of non-refoulement. Regular technical level meetings between UNHCR and government agencies have enabled the sharing of information and improvement of coordination and communications over the years. The coordination was particularly useful in the aftermath of the tragic events of Easter Sunday this year. The increase in the number of refugees in recent years globally due to internal and international conflicts is a serious concern. These challenges demand our collective commitment and cooperation to address. We also take this opportunity to thank donors and partners who have made generous contributions over the years towards the UNHCR. We wish you well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. High Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of New Zealand, Gillian Dempster.
High Commissioner, co-hosts, co-conveners and distinguished representatives, I'm delighted to be here today at this inaugural Global Refugee Forum to confirm the New Zealand Government's strong support for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and the work we all do to deliver durable protection solutions for refugees globally. We would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the contribution of the many states that are hosting refugees and the work they are doing in providing protection and much-needed assistance. We also acknowledge the important role that refugees can have in shaping solutions and supporting responses. We look forward to their contribution during the forum. The pledges we have made at this forum are a tangible demonstration of New Zealand's strong commitment to the system of international protection, which provides for the UNHCR and the international community to work together in sharing responsibilities and developing solutions to protect the most vulnerable people around the world. New Zealand recognises the vital importance of providing early, predictable and flexible funding to support the work of the UNHCR. In February this year, New Zealand pledged $18 million in multi-year unearmarked core funding to support UNHCR's annual programs from 2019 to 21. In addition, New Zealand will continue to work within international institutions to encourage their commitment to innovative and creative protection solutions. From July 2020, New Zealand's refugee quota program will increase to welcome 1,500 refugees annually. To deliver this increase, additional funding is being provided for settlement support services and to work with communities across New Zealand to welcome refugees and support their successful settlement. New Zealand is also expanding the Welcoming Communities program across New Zealand to further support newcomers, including refugees, to feel welcomed and have a feeling of belonging. We acknowledge the skills and work experiences that refugees bring with them. Through the recently announced government employment strategy, we are committed to delivering the action plan to support refugees into meaningful and sustained employment within the New Zealand labour market. We will work closely with the UNHCR to support new and emerging refugee resettlement countries in the Asia-Pacific region, and through the Asylum Capacity Support Group, support the development of protection capacity in the Pacific region. We are pleased to join and endorse the Joint Minister's Statement together with Global Refugee Sponsorship Initiative States Network countries, supporting refugee sponsorship programs and pilots. These provide opportunities for broader active community engagement in supporting refugee resettlement with benefits for both the community and sponsored refugees. In conclusion, New Zealand reiterates our commitment to the system of international protection. Working together through the implementation of our collective pledges, we will all contribute to delivering the goals of the Global Compact and the 3-year resettlement strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Austria, Elisabeth Tichy-Fisselberger. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. Let me start by thanking our co-hosts and co-conveners for inviting us to this first and historical Global Refugee Forum. We welcome this opportunity to bring together stakeholders and partners with the goal of developing tangible improvements for refugees and refugee hosting communities and give a say to refugees themselves. Since 2015, Austria has been among the European states hosting the highest per capita numbers of recognized refugees. In the last 4 years, 108,000 persons have been granted international protection in our country, and many more refugees and persons in need of protection have been accepted over the last years and decades. With more than 70 million people having been forced from their homes, the situation of refugees and internally displaced persons has currently reached a new level of unprecedented dimension. In this context, Austria has provided in 2019 €55 million of assistance for refugees in primary refugee hosting countries, predominantly for persons who have fled from Syria. Today, we can pledge an additional €5.4 million of assistance for primary refugee hosting countries. Further funding might be decided by the new government we are now waiting for, once the budget for 2020 is approved by Parliament. We have significantly stepped up our efforts to integrate recognized refugees into Austrian society. The three essential pillars of the Austrian integration system are the knowledge of the German language, economic self-sufficiency, and respect for Austrian and European laws and values. People enjoying international protection in Austria are granted full access to the labour market and to respective training activities. Being one of the co-sponsors for the theme education, let me mention that in Austria, refugee children have access to and are obliged to attend school to the same extent as Austrian children. In order to facilitate their integration into the school system, they have to attend one preparatory year of kindergarten, which is offered to refugee families free of charge. In autumn 2015, the Labour Market Service has introduced the project Skills Checks, which is aimed at determining the qualification, skills and professional experience of refugees against the background of job offers and facilitate their job placements. One measure within the project, the Skills Checks for Women, is especially aimed at removing gender-based barriers and ensuring equal access of female refugees to education, vocational training and work. Skill Checks for Women has been awarded with the Public Service Award by the United Nations in 2019. Austria is also a co-sponsor for the theme Solutions. Our focus in this area lies on active engagement in voluntary return programs with the aim of supporting a sustainable and steady voluntary return of refugees. Currently, Austria is implementing a project on strengthening voluntary assisted return in cooperation with IOM. Thank you very much, High Commissioner. I leave it at this. Thank you.
Apologies, Ambassador. Thank you very much for your statement. Io doy la palabra ahora al embajador de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, Jorge Valero.
Gracias, Alto Comisionado. Usted ha dicho a nuestras autoridades que no debe pronunciarse sobre temas políticos cuando le han pedido que se pronuncie en contra de las criminales medidas coercitivas unilaterales del gobierno de Donald Trump contra el pueblo venezolano, que son la causa principal de los movimientos de venezolanos al exterior, pero con frecuencia emite juicios de valor negativo sobre Venezuela. No solo politiza la situación de nuestro país, sino que se presta a la infame campaña mediática internacional en contra de la democracia venezolana. Preocupa la metodología utilizada por el ACNUR para la recolección de datos y cifras para elaborar sus informes sobre Venezuela, cifras proporcionadas por gobiernos que tienen una agenda motivada políticamente contra nuestro país. Es singular que el gobierno de nuestra región abulten cifras sobre migrantes y refugiados venezolanos con el avieso propósito de obtener financiamiento externo para sus fantasmagóricos programas. Se manipulan cifras sobre el alto tránsito de personas que históricamente han existido en la frontera colombo-venezolana, alimentándose de la estrategia promovida desde Washington, según la cual hay una crisis de refugiados en la región causada por Venezuela. No hemos recibido de ningún organismo internacional financiamiento para mitigar el costo de la inversión social que representa dar protección a los migrantes y refugiados que por millones han llegado a Venezuela. Tenemos estadísticas aportadas por países de nuestra región que demuestran que el ingreso de venezolanos ha descendido el último año y tendencialmente se observa un mayor retorno e ingreso de personas a nuestro país que las que salen de él. En Venezuela hay una revolución humanista que protege a todos los que viven en nuestra patria. El gobierno bolivariano mantiene los programas sociales en favor de los migrantes y refugiados a pesar de las nefastas consecuencias económicas y financieras que causan las medidas coercitivas unilaterales aplicadas por el gobierno de Donald Trump. El programa de vivienda gratuito ha favorecido a 2.872.695 familias, que equivale a un total de 11.490.680 personas beneficiadas. Esto es el 38.3% de la población total del país, un récord mundial. Se han adjudicado 350.000 viviendas a familias de nacionalidad colombiana. En Venezuela los programas de salud, de educación, deporte, cultura son totalmente gratuitos, incluso para los migrantes y refugiados. Nuestro país obtuvo un índice de desarrollo humano alto. El informe de desarrollo humano 2019 del PNUD se ubicó en el puesto 96. En Venezuela no hay ninguna crisis humanitaria, más bien mantenemos buenos estándares de vida. Venezolanos han sido víctimas de violaciones de sus derechos en países de destino. Nuestro gobierno ha puesto en marcha un plan de carácter humanitario denominado Vuelta a la Patria para fomentar el retorno voluntario. Ya han regresado al país 16.700 personas y hay más de 60.000 solicitudes en nuestras embajadas y consulados en el exterior. Nuestro gobierno ha solicitado a la ACNUR y a la OIM movilizar $300 millones para facilitar ese retorno. Esperamos respuesta. Los venezolanos no encuentran mejores condiciones de vida fuera de nuestras fronteras nacionales y están retornando incluso por sus propios medios para incorporarse con optimismo en los planes de desarrollo que impulsa el gobierno bolivariano. Afrontemos las causas que originan los movimientos de personas. Mientras persista la pobreza, la miseria y la desigualdad en los países en desarrollo, habrá migrantes y refugiados. Gracias, Presidente.
Muchas gracias, señor embajador. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Namibia, Penda Andreas Nanda.
Thank you, Commissioner. It is a great honor for me to address the first ever Global Refugee Forum on behalf of the government and people of Namibia, which has submitted concrete pledges and contributions aimed at advancing the objectives outlined in the Global Compact. Namibia believes that these pledges are instrumental in fostering social cohesion with tangible benefits for both refugees and host communities. Namibia continues to provide primary and secondary education to asylum seekers and refugees for free as per the national education system and allocate needed resources for teachers' salary, teaching and learning materials. Similarly, refugees have access to free medical facilities and are provided with identity cards and travel documents. Refugees are also allowed to participate in the economic, sport and arts activities and enjoy protection of their human rights. Equally, Namibia is taking specific attention to the older refugees who find themselves in situations of risk and displacement, hence protection and support of their rights is imperative. Namibia has taken a bold decision to fully integrate former Angolan refugees within the communities they have chosen, and those who could not afford to pay for their resident permits, the government has exempted them from payment. Equally, the process of returning home by former Namibian refugees from the Republic of Botswana was conducted in a spirit of safety and dignity. In addition, the government has taken steps to continuously monitor their integration and support them when necessary. Namibia is committed to end statelessness within its borders by 2023, and an action plan to eradicate statelessness persons is being internalized and will be implemented as from 2020. Noting that the Global Compact on Refugees calls for the facilitation and participation of all refugees in the Global Refugee Forum, in the spirit of no one should be left behind, Namibia was greatly distressed to have learned that the participation of refugees from the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic in this forum was not facilitated in accordance with the GCR. As such, Namibia behoves to implore this forum to address this injustice, to ensure that all refugees enjoy equal access to the assistance that is being pledged on this forum. Lastly, High Commissioner, let us strive by all means as stakeholders endeavoring to share this great responsibility to deal with the root causes that lead to the creation of refugees and IDPs around the world. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Je donne la parole maintenant à l'ambassadeur de la République démocratique du Congo, Zeno Mukongai.
Republic of Congo. Zeno Mukongai.
Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire,
High Commissioner,
distingués invités,
distinguished guests,
Mesdames et Messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen,
je fais cette déclaration au nom de Son Excellence, l'ambassadeur Zeno Mukongo-Ngai, empêché.
who is unable to be here.
C'est pour nous un grand honneur de prendre la parole au nom du gouvernement de la République démocratique du Congo à l'occasion de la tenue de ce forum. Tribune unique pour la RDC, pays d'origine de 890 000 compatriotes réfugiés dans les pays limitrophes, pays d'asile de plus de 547 294 réfugiés et qui abrite 4 600 000 déplacés internes. Le contexte national en RDC est caractérisé par un environnement propice à la protection des demandeurs d'asile et des réfugiés, notamment la ratification des conventions de 1951 et son protocole additionnel de 1967, ainsi que celle de l'OUA de 1969, dont nous avons célébré les 50 ans le 10 septembre dernier. Le respect sans faille du principe de non-refoulement, le droit d'asile inscrit dans la Constitution du 18 février 2006, la loi portant statut des réfugiés qui leur accorde les mêmes droits que les nationaux en ce qui concerne notamment l'accès à l'emploi, à l'éducation, aux soins de santé et la libre circulation sur le territoire une fois reconnue. L'hospitalité de la population qui explique que 72% de 547 294 réfugiés se trouvant sur notre territoire vivent avec les communautés hôtes, rendant ainsi les camps et sites de réfugiés des cas d'exception. Voici les promesses de la RDC. 1. En tant que pays d'hôte, la République démocratique du Congo offre 200 000 réfugiés rwandais qui ont opté d'y demeurer après la clause de cessation de leur statut, un permis de séjour d'une validité de 10 ans. 2. La contribution à la mobilité des réfugiés et l'admission dans des pays tiers. La RDC compte imprimer 1000 titres de voyage biométriques dans les 2 années à venir. 3. Confrontée durement aux problèmes des déplacés internes, la RDC compte déposer en 2020 les instruments de ratification de la Convention de Kampala signée depuis juillet 2014. 4. La RDC s'engage à adhérer aux 2 conventions sur l'apatridie en améliorant l'accès aux documents d'état civil pour les groupes à risque d'apatridie parmi les réfugiés. 6. En tant que pays d'origine, la RDC s'engage pour le retour des compatriotes en refuge. À cet effet, un accent particulier sera mis sur la viabilisation des zones de retour des réfugiés ainsi que la réactivation des commissions tripartites avec le Rwanda, avec le Congo, le Rwanda, le Burundi, la Tanzanie, la Zambie et l'Ouganda pour un retour digne et sécurisé. Il faut savoir que la Banque mondiale va appuyer le gouvernement dans la réhabilitation des infrastructures de base dans certaines localités de retour des réfugiés. Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire, ces engagements resteront des vœux pieux sans un appui financier conséquent pour leur mise en œuvre. Nous en appelons à l'esprit de solidarité de tous les contributeurs, bailleurs de fonds et du HCR, notre partenaire traditionnel. Je vous remercie pour votre écoute.
Merci Madame et désolé de vous solliciter, surtout que vous étiez en train de nous offrir des propositions extrêmement intéressantes. Je donne la parole maintenant à l'ambassadeur du Bénin, Éloi Lao. Vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire. La délégation du Bénin vous remercie, ainsi que les co-organisateurs du premier Forum mondial sur les réfugiés pour l'excellente organisation de notre présente rencontre. La question des réfugiés est une problématique qui interpelle toute la communauté internationale. Le nombre de personnes contraintes à fuir leur pays pour diverses raisons et dans le dénuement reste toujours élevé. Ces contraintes en nom, conflits politiques, violences armées, terrorisme, insécurité, catastrophes naturelles, intolérance religieuse, entre autres. Face à ce triste tableau sur la situation des réfugiés, une action efficace et concertée s'avère nécessaire pour offrir de meilleures conditions de vie à cette catégorie de personnes vulnérables, au nombre desquelles des enfants, des femmes, des personnes âgées et handicapées. La communauté internationale devra traiter ces situations de façon appropriée et structurée en apportant aide et assistance et en poursuivant les efforts de mise en place d'un système de coordination des actions initiées et des mesures adoptées dans une approche de responsabilité partagée. Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire, nous devons conjuguer nos efforts au niveau local, national, sous-régional et international pour organiser l'accueil et l'intégration des réfugiés et promouvoir leur contribution aux activités économiques et sociales dans les pays d'accueil et de séjour. Le rôle des pays d'accueil et de transit est très important et le Bénin poursuit sa politique d'accueil et d'hospitalité depuis plusieurs années en faveur des réfugiés. C'est pourquoi j'ai grand plaisir à vous informer que la République du Bénin est en voie de finaliser le processus préparatoire de l'ouverture à Cotonou du bureau sous-régional de l'initiative Nansen pour la gestion des catastrophes naturelles. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Haut-Commissaire.
Merci. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Lesotho, Refilpo Lichobo.
High Commissioner for Refugees, distinguished guests, all protocol observed. I'm actually making this statement on behalf of my ambassador, Mr. Refilpo Lichobo, who could not be here now. The government of the Kingdom of Lesotho wishes to align herself with sentiments of previous speakers in congratulating you and your team for organizing this first ever successful Global Refugee Forum. The government of the Kingdom of Lesotho facilitates freedom of movement of refugees and asylum seekers. The Kingdom issues personal identity cards, machine-readable travel documents to refugees, and proof of identity certificates to asylum seekers. These documents are recognized by financial and public service institutions, enabling the socio-economic inclusion of persons of concern. Every child born in the country is issued a birth certificate. There is a process currently underway to review the social protection system to also include refugee children. Chairperson, the government of the Kingdom of Lesotho wishes to pledge as follows: adopting by 2020 the Bill on Nationality that grants nationality to children of unknown origin found in its territory and provides for a safeguard to grant nationality to children born on the territory who would otherwise be stateless. Developing a plan for suitable solutions to refugee response plan in its nationality disaster management strategy to help refugees in the country. Creating opportunities targeting refugees in supporting their integration in other areas, in encouraging and facilitating refugees access to income generation opportunities like the construction industry and seasonal agricultural markets. Facilitates sublease of 3 acres of land to refugees and asylum seekers for agriculture and livelihoods self-reliance. The purpose for this is to sustain and enhance life for them as opposed to their reliance on government stipend and food parcels. Chairperson, there is a need, however, for funding for refugees wishing to further their studies at universities. The Kingdom of Lesotho may request fees support to enable it award scholarship to refugee children in the Kingdom for tertiary education. The Kingdom also needs assistance for refugees to be trained on livelihood skills. Chairperson, I wish to end my statement by thanking you once again for having invited the Kingdom of Lesotho to this historic and important forum. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lesotho. And I now give the floor to the Deputy Permanent Representative of Myanmar, A18.
Thank you, Mr. High Commissioner. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Myanmar shares the global concern over the increasing number of refugees around the world. Since voluntary repatriation is one of the effective and durable solutions for refugee issues, we have been working tirelessly for the speedy repatriation of displaced persons. As a result of close cooperation between Myanmar and Thailand, over 1,000 of Myanmar displaced persons living in the camps in Thailand have been successfully repatriated to Myanmar. The distinguished delegate of Thailand has also mentioned it in his statement this morning. With regard to the displaced persons from Rakhine State, we are ready to receive verified returnees in a voluntary, safe, and dignified manner in accordance with the bilateral arrangements. As of November 2019, 95% of the list provided by Bangladesh has already been verified. Myanmar has informed it to Bangladesh side. Bangladesh side should strictly adhere to and sincerely and steadfastly implement the agreed bilateral arrangement for successful repatriation in a voluntary, safe, and dignified manner. Although there are various obstacles, including killing and threats by ASAR to hinder repatriation, over 400 people have returned from Cox's Bazar with their own arrangements. Some 400 people of Hindu faith have long expressed their desire to return, but they still haven't yet managed to do so. Mr. High Commissioner, despite being a least developed country, Myanmar has been conducting various development projects for the perspective returning with our own limited resources and from the assistance of some donors and regional partners. Activities for resettlement, rebuilding villages, development and livelihood opportunities, as well as health and education facilities are being undertaken for them. I would like to thank UNDP and UNHCR, ASEAN friends, as well as regional partners for assisting Myanmar in creating conducive conditions. Myanmar government, UNHCR and UNDP are jointly implementing 43 quick impact projects for the prospective returnees, and the success of these projects encouraged to further increase the number of the projects as the security condition allows. Before ICJ on 11 and 12 December, the State Councillor and her team provided the detailed and factual account of the issue of Rakhine State and related matters. Mr. High Commissioner, in conclusion, we are committed to continue our efforts in creating more conducive conditions for all returnees with genuine political will. We believe that with the concerted efforts of all stakeholders and cooperation of the international community, we can start a repatriation process in the near future, and practical and sustainable solution can also be achieved. I thank you, Mr. High Commissioner.
Thank you, Myanmar. I doy la palabra ahora al embajador de Paraguay, Julio César Peralta Rodas.
Muchas gracias, señor alto comisionado. Primeramente, la delegación del Paraguay desea agradecer a todo el equipo de la Oficina del Alto Comisionado de las Naciones Unidas para los Refugiados, ACNUR, por sus esfuerzos desplegados para la organización de este primer Foro Mundial de Refugiados. Sin lugar a dudas, este foro marca un hito en la historia de la cooperación internacional, ya que pone de relieve la voluntad de la comunidad internacional de afrontar de manera holística la difícil y acuciante situación que los refugiados atraviesan en todas las regiones del mundo. En un contexto de profunda crisis en varias regiones del mundo en el cual se constata la compleja y creciente situación de los refugiados, el Paraguay se mantiene firme junto al multilateralismo como única vía de solución para aliviar la presión de las comunidades locales. Por tal motivo, como país que acoge refugiados, expresamos nuestro compromiso para defender y proteger la institución del refugio en el marco de la Convención sobre el Estatuto de los Refugiados de 1951. Señor Alto Comisionado, es por eso que el Paraguay lamenta que la figura del refugio sea objeto de abusos. Deseamos recordar la naturaleza política de toda actividad humanitaria y en especial en la muy sensible labor que realiza la ACNUR. Recientemente el Paraguay ha visto a la ACNUR actuar en pro de la procura de refugio para 3 personas prófugas de la justicia paraguaya por la Comisión de Crímenes Comunes, por lo cual reiteramos respetuosamente nuestro pedido al Alto Comisionado que no permita la utilización distorsionada de la noble figura del refugio, pues esto debilita seriamente a esta institución creada con la noble finalidad de cuidar de la vida y la integridad de personas en situación de vulnerabilidad o necesidad. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor to the Chargé d'Affaires, Mr. Iraqi Janti from Georgia. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, excellencies, first of all, let me express sincere gratitude to the High Commissioner Grandi and Federal Council of the Swiss Confederation for co-hosting the first ever Global Forum. And also extend thanks to the co-conveners of the forum for jointly taking the plight of more than 70 million of forcibly displaced persons to the top of the global agenda. As we face the highest level of forced displacement ever recorded, it is of an utmost importance to reinvigorate our collective efforts in order to better address root causes of forced displacement, as well as to mitigate the risks of grave human rights violations that millions of forcibly displaced persons face on a daily basis. Distinguished delegates, Georgia has its own difficulties with regard to the forced displacement. For more than 25 years, hundreds of thousands of Georgian citizens who, as a result of several waves of ethnic cleansing, have been expelled from Georgia's occupied Abkhazia and Somali regions, continue to be deprived of the fundamental right to return to their homes in safety and dignity. Yet, against the dire background, Georgia spares no effort to ensure fair and efficient asylum procedure on a national level, providing adequate social and economic guarantees to asylum seekers and international protection holders. With this aim, like all citizens of Georgia, asylum seekers, refugees, and humanitarian status holders are eligible to the numerous state services, including inter alia, state universal health care program, free professional education, and access to free legal aid and representation in court related to their cases on international protection. Mr. High Commissioner, Georgia pledges to enhance access to education services for refugees and humanitarian status holders. The pledge encompasses several directions, including refinement of higher and vocational education recognition procedures, improvement of access to free of charge general education, and elaboration of legal mechanisms to support better access to higher education. As the Georgian asylum seeker system has been advancing over the past years, we pledge to share our experience and knowledge to interested parties within the scope of Asylum Capacity Support Group, taking into account the current capacity of the Human Resources of Asylum Authority. In addition to this, we pledge to further improve our national legislation on international protection with due regard to guarantee efficiency of the procedure through introduction of new rules and regulations based on EU standards, applicable to Georgian context. Furthermore, to extend the support base beyond the government, Georgian national human rights institutions pledge to provide assessment on human rights situation of asylum seekers, refugees and humanitarian status holders, and submit relevant recommendations in its annual parliamentary reports. In conclusion, let me extend Georgia's full support to the global endeavor to alleviate the suffering of millions of refugees, asylum seekers, internally displaced and stateless persons around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Georgia. Je donne maintenant la parole au ministre plénipotentiaire de la Tunisie, Saminak.
Merci, Monsieur le Commissaire. Thank you, High Commissioner. Permettez-moi de vous féliciter,
Allow me to commend you, Mr. Filippo Grandi, as well as Switzerland, the co-host, and the 5 co-conveners for the excellent work done in the preparing and organization of this GRF. I would like to avail myself of this opportunity to renew our deep appreciation and homage to the staff of the High Commissioner's Office for their commitment to the guarantee of a dignified life and a safe life for the millions of people displaced by force. Mr. High Commissioner, Tunisia would like to reaffirm its commitment to the Global Compact on Refugees and our attachment to the principles and mechanisms contained therein. This provides an ideal response with more solidarity to the large movements of refugees and to the challenges that arise thereof. Tunisia welcomes the convening of this first forum on refugees. The idea is to put into concrete terms our commitments to better and more predictably and more equitably share this burden and the responsibilities. The global response has been, as you have done well to recall yesterday, Mr. High Commissioner, deeply imbalanced. Responsibilities have been pushed toward those countries least endowed in resources at a time when the movement of persons displaced by force has reached unprecedented levels. Shared responsibility, we must underscore, can only come about in a climate of collegiality, concrete and frank solidarity, and international cooperation. We would like to join others in calling for the implementation of a clear mechanism for measuring the impact of receiving refugees in the host countries. This with the perspective of focusing on shared and equitable shared bearing of the burden and responsibilities. Tunisia underscores the need to strengthen the work with partners, particularly with international development partners, and we need to complement the humanitarian assistance and lighten the impact on the economic and social development of host countries. We'd like to underscore our deep attachment to the respect for our international commitments in the area of asylum and international protection for refugees. We have maintained over recent times and over recent years a policy of open doors despite a national context of transition that is, and a regional context that is ever more delicate and difficult. This is particularly in the face of mixed and large-scale movements. My delegation would also like to underscore that in a few days we will have a seat on the Security Council. We will be working in that framework to move towards collective solutions to promote peace and security around the world, to bring about sustainable development for people, and to build bridges of confidence, dialogue, and solidarity and cooperation between and among all member countries. I thank you for your kind attention.
Merci beaucoup et félicitations pour votre élection au Conseil de sécurité. Je donne maintenant la parole à la ministre conseillère du Sénégal, Fatoum Gaye.
Fatoum Gaye, the floor is yours.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président et Monsieur le Commissaire. Je suis bien l'ambassadeur du Sénégal. Le Sénégal se félicite du Haut-Commissariat pour tous les efforts qu'il déploie pour les réfugiés à travers le monde et l'organisation de ce premier forum mondial qui offre une tribune d'échange et de communication donnant l'occasion de mieux consolider ensemble le pacte mondial sur les réfugiés et d'autres d'être plus en conformité avec les objectifs de développement durable à l'horizon 2030. Le Sénégal, en plus de son adhésion à la Convention de Genève ainsi que celle de l'OIA de 1969, régissant les aspects propres aux problèmes des réfugiés en Afrique, a également adopté la loi 6827 de 1968 modifiée. Et notre pays s'est également doté d'organes de gestion des réfugiés, à savoir le Comité national chargé de la gestion des réfugiés rapatriés et personnes déplacées, de la Commission nationale d'éligibilité au statut des réfugiés. Cette dernière est l'organe gouvernemental compétent pour instruire les demandes d'asile. Le profilage qui a eu lieu en février 2017 a révélé que la population de réfugiés sous mandat du HCR est estimée au nombre de 18 031, avec 12 779 en zone rurale, 1 929 dans les zones urbaines et 33 376 demandeurs d'asile dont la demande de reconnaissance du statut de réfugié est en cours de traitement auprès de la Commission nationale d'éligibilité. Avec le soutien du HCR, 24 000 ont bénéficié d'un rapatriement volontaire et environ 13 000 ont choisi l'intégration locale. Pour cette dernière catégorie, l'État du Sénégal a lancé un programme toujours en cours pour les doter de cartes de réfugiés qui leur permet d'accéder aux services sociaux, économiques et financiers dans les mêmes conditions que les Sénégalais. Face à cette situation des réfugiés, le Sénégal en appelle à l'implication de toutes les parties prenantes pour une synergie d'action globale dans la concrétisation du partage des responsabilités concernant l'accueil des réfugiés afin d'éviter les longs séjours pour ces personnes une fois la paix et la stabilité rétablies dans leur pays d'origine. Les objectifs de notre stratégie consistent à identifier les rôles, les priorités et les ressources nécessaires pour garantir les droits, la sécurité et la protection des réfugiés et demandeurs d'asile d'une part, et à mettre en œuvre des solutions durables d'autre part. Cette politique s'aligne parfaitement à la planification stratégique du gouvernement du Sénégal, contenue dans le plan Sénégal émergent et la couverture maladie universelle, et entre en droite ligne des objectifs internationaux en matière affirmé à travers la déclaration de New York de 2016 sur les réfugiés et les migrants. Ma délégation salue les efforts sans relâche du HCR dans notre pays en matière d'accompagnement et de gestion des déplacés et des réfugiés. Nous félicitons le haut-commissaire ainsi que toute son équipe sur le terrain pour tous ces défis relevés, afin de donner à ces hommes, femmes et enfants un sentiment d'être écoutés, vus et assistés dans leur lutte pour la sauvegarde de leur dignité et de leur stabilité sociale. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup au Sénégal. I will now give the floor to the last speaker before we break again for the last round of guests here on the podium. And it's my pleasure to give the floor to the Apostolic Nuncio, Archbishop Ivan Jurkovic.
Mr. High Commissioner, the Holy See welcomes the focus given to the Global Compact on refugees to health and education, the two areas where the Catholic Church, through its many institutions, is actively engaged. Indeed, access to education and health care inspires hope and allows refugees to seek meaningful work, helping them to integrate into societies that welcome them. This is especially true for refugee youth, which represent half of the refugee population. The Holy See commends the numerous pledges made for the education of young refugees. For its part, the Holy See delegation is pleased to announce the Global Compact on Education next year to reinforce the dedication of the Church to open and inclusive education. Similarly, the Holy See will continue to insist that the right to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is not negotiable. It must also be realized through non-discriminatory, comprehensive laws, policies and practices rooted in the centrality of the human person. These policies must respect the right to life and women's dignity, including their specific cultural and moral values. High Commissioner, prevention, protection, and durable solutions are inevitably interlinked. If one fails, the other will not adequately deliver. The Holy See hopes that the Global Refugee Forum will address each through burden and responsibility sharing, translating them into concrete solution sharing, not only today, but in the years to come. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Archbishop. Let me now pause once more, and for the last time, the list of speakers. We'll have a few more before the end, to very warmly invite to the podium the European Commissioner for International Partnerships, Jutta Urpilainen. Before we welcome the next guest, I would like to simply welcome Commissioner Urpilainen, who has just told me she's in her 18th day in office as European Commissioner. We take the opportunity to congratulate you and to wish you all the best in this very important task that you have taken up. You told me, as you told me earlier, Commissioner Urpilainen comes from a political background, has had a very distinguished political career, But she also told me she's a storyteller, so we look forward to that. And while we meditate on this and we welcome you again, I would like to welcome to the first Global Refugee Forum the Prime Minister of Somalia. Please receive him with an applause.